Wars, revolution, and the collapse of countries are made of this. Yesterday I made a video about the collapse in oil prices and what effect it would have on your life in the future. And before I was done with that video, the world had changed. I was making the video, oil was $1 a barrel. By the time I was done making the video, oil was minus $40 a barrel, and I had to cut a separate introduction to that video and put it on the front of it. And today, the same thing happened. This is the June contract of oil. So this is for next month. Now, yesterday, the May contract, as it was coming due, suddenly got volatile and the price just dropped, and suddenly it was minus. It went from $1 to minus $40. And today, on the June contract, already we're seeing this enormous volatility. I started making that video, and oil for June delivery was up in the $20 range. And by the time I was done with it, it had crashed as low as $6.50. Now, there isn't any oil producer on the planet, I believe, that can actually make a profit on oil at $6.50. And the number of countries around the world that are reliant on oil income, oil exports to be taxed to run the governments on, there's quite a few of them. And so, like I said, this can cause wars, revolution. As soon as a country loses its tax revenues from one source, they start reaching out like a drowning man trying to grab for anything that they can. And when they start taking too much taxation from the private sector, the economy is doomed. One of the things that I predicted was that there would very soon be bailouts of the oil industry in the United States because we are the world's largest oil producer. Not the largest exporter, but the oil producer. And it has already come true. Donald Trump tweeted today that we will never let the great U.S. oil and gas industry down. I have instructed the Secretary of Energy and the Secretary of the Treasury to formulate a plan which will make funds available so that these very important companies and jobs will be secured long into the future. So it has already begun. This means that they're going to create more currency. So they look for a very, very volatile future in oil. Now, soon, they're going to cut back on oil production. So Saudi Arabia will stop trying to flood the world with oil, and there will be oil-producing rigs that are mothballed and so on, pumps that are mothballed. And so production will slow, and supply and demand will eventually come into equilibrium. And then once we start using up some of the oil that's being stored, then prices will explode. So right now we have this very deflationary episode, and soon we're going to have a very inflationary episode. But in the meantime, low oil prices mean that it's going to be more profitable to run mining companies, to run airlines. So this is a very, very weird time where things are changing practically by the second. And in the upcoming video, there's some economic processes that I explain that you really need to know to be able to predict what's going to happen in the future. When you're confronted with a set of circumstances that you've never seen before, if you can at least be able to compare them to something in history where something like that has happened before, you can then make plans and be able to financially survive what happens next. Good luck, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Following up on yesterday's video of Oil Armageddon, this is the crude oil futures contracts going all the way out to October of 2025. And what you see here, this is natural. If you're going to buy oil in 2025 for delivery, you're going to pay more. There's storage costs and so on, and they expect that prices will be higher in the future. And then as you get down to the month that it's going to be delivered in, the price will change. It'll go up or down. And then the contract expires and deliveries happen and so on. But what you see here is yesterday, we went minus. This is the close. but we went greater than $40, minus $40 per barrel yesterday, which is just totally insane. Now, this has recovered, and oil for delivery right now is it's above $5. But the thing that people aren't thinking about here is, even though it's in positive territory, at $20, the U.S., like all of the shale oil and stuff, all those companies were losing huge. They need $30, $40, $50 a barrel oil just to break even. So they're losing big time. And the further this goes down, even the easy oil to pump becomes at a loss. And so we're looking at potentially huge bailouts of the U.S. oil industry. But globally, I said that this is the stuff that triggers wars and revolution, and it does. Because if it stays down at $5, there's no income for Russia. There's no income for Saudi Arabia. They start running massive deficits. Venezuela is already on the skids, and their economy, which has already collapsed, is going to collapse further, because what little income they have is pretty much reliant on oil. So the government of Venezuela then has to, they've got military, and they've got the government, and now Maduro has to reach out and try and grab wealth from somewhere else, and there's pretty much no more wealth left in that country. So moving on, this is the price of light crude oil, and here at the beginning of the year it was above $60, and then Saudi Arabia starts this price war and starts producing a bunch of extra oil. But then the coronavirus hits, the pandemic, and consumption of oil. So demand, we've got more supply, less demand, and the price falls. And we were at $20 2 days ago, and then yesterday it went from $20 to minus $40. This is totally insane. This can only happen in this Keynesian world where you don't need cash anymore. Get in line over here, and we're going to give you a barrel of oil and pay you $40 to haul it away. Part of this is that there isn't any place left to store it, because you've got all this excess supply and falling demand. And so that's what's happening with the price. So some viewer response on Oil Armageddon. This can't be real. I must be dreaming. Well, no, you aren't dreaming. This is real, and it's, there's an upside to everything, and you have to try and figure out what that upside is. I'll get to that in just a moment. But no, this is either you're dreaming or this is a nightmare. It's so I'm not sure why this happened, but keep in mind it's an expiring contract on low volume, and the June contract was not nearly as volatile. But you know what? Neither was the May contract a month ago. Wait to see what happens next. You got to wait 1 month to see what is going to happen with that June contract and whether that one will be going hugely negative. But even if oil sells at $10 a barrel when this contract comes due, then the world is in some serious trouble, because of the imbalances that are created between governments. The world has become, the whole financial system, the supply chains, everything became this super complex machine. And it became, the more parts you add, the more fragile it becomes. And we've protected this machine from outside stresses that would normally make it stronger. There's a book called Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, but he shows that he came up with the expression anti-fragile, because the only expressions we had before for something that was robust or stable, you have fragile things, but the opposite of fragile isn't actually just robust. It's something that gets stronger when it's stressed. And this is, you get exposed to a virus, and if you build an immunity, you're now stronger. This is what happens, what causes evolution. It's what happens in nature, is the stresses actually make you stronger. You work out and stress your muscles, you get stronger afterwards. And that is what a system needs. And we've created this system, and then the central banks kept on protecting the market from the outside stresses and going in and saving things and fixing things. And that makes it very, very fragile. So we'll see what happens when the June contract comes. I don't believe this analysis is accurate. We'll see in June. But I like Mike Maloney's videos and his expertise. Thank you very much. I hope he's missing it here. And you know what? I hope I am too. I really, really, really hope I'm wrong, because I don't want the type of world that I see coming at us, if this ends up being correct, is not a world that I want. I want a world where I'm still able to get the things I want and need and live a life that is not too stressful and not in poverty and so on. I don't want to see a world divided where you have very wealthy people and very poor people and nothing in between. I want to see a big middle class. Whichever end you end up on, if you end up being one of the big winners and there's 10,000 losers for every big winner, and you end up being wealthy in a very, very poor world. I mean, I liked driving my Tesla Roadster, but you don't want to be seen in a Lamborghini or something like that, or a Rolls Royce, when driving through starving neighborhoods. That's going to not only be bad taste, but it's going to be very dangerous to do. Nothing like a little skirmish in the Straits of Hormuz or Venezuela won't fix. True, except a little skirmish in this type of scenario can turn into a very big skirmish, and we could end up with like a world war coming out of one of these little skirmishes. So it's nothing that I'm hoping for to boost the price of oil. And there's already stuff, I mean, if you read up on it, the U.S. has some exercises going on down near Venezuela right now. There's more troops down there, more ships down there. And so it is possible that something could happen. But this is not the resolution I want to see. It's up to every government on the planet now to try. The government that wins this in this pandemic is the government that balances the economy and the spread of the virus. And so the best scenario that I can think of is, instead of all of these bailouts and other plans, the governments should be sending out kits of face masks, eyewear, and gloves to everybody, and then not shutting down any business that doesn't, if you're packing people really close together, like a movie theater or where you have to remove your mask, restaurants and bars. Those, yes, you got to keep them closed. I hate to say that, but they should reopen everything else, and they should be encouraging as many transactions as possible to get us through this without an enormous deflation and the potential collapse of the financial system, because deflation can cause that. And right now the world's governments are causing a really severe deflation that's happening at a much faster pace than even I had imagined in my video, in my book that I wrote back in 2005. I was writing about this. And then the video, episode 7 of Hidden Secrets of Money, covers this deflation that we're going through right now. But it's going to happen much faster because of the pandemic and because we were in such enormous bubbles. Mike, they were laughing at you some years ago in the belly of the beast. This is referring to my video about the potential of $10 oil when I was speaking at the Russian banking conference, the annual Russian banking conference, to a bunch of bankers, and they didn't believe me, and it's happening right now. They aren't laughing now. Thank you so much for that comment. Mike, I see more and more of videos where your past predictions have recently been proven correct. There's only one of your predictions I care to see proven correct. Let's get it done in 2020. Stacks on stacks, baby. So this is a gold and silver stacker, and I want to thank you for the comment. And yes, I've been personally accumulating precious metals since October of 2002. I was buying gold. April of 2003, I started buying silver and silver stocks, and I've been stacking since, basically, and I've accumulated a very good position in precious metals. When the gold-silver ratio is really high and silver is cheap compared to gold, I buy silver. When it's low, I buy gold. I really do not sell any of it. I just keep on accumulating, getting ready for a day. But there's going to come a day when there's a rush into this like nobody has ever seen in their lives. And it's the government reactions to all of this stuff that's happening. When they try to manipulate the economy, they do it through currency creation. And so those reactions are going to cause gold and silver to be astronomical. Thanks, Mike, for all the info. Who's getting rich off of this and how? What can the little guy actually do besides just hedge with some gold? Well, I believe that gold and silver, especially right now, silver over gold, and you're going to think I'm wrong if you do that. I'm not recommending anything. This is what I'm doing. I'm buying silver. I can't allow myself to buy gold as an emotional reaction during a period of time when silver is so undervalued compared to gold. When the masses come charging in to gold and silver, and right now it's big smart money that is coming in, you're going to see that in a little while. At that point, there will come a day when the price of gold gets too high compared to what it was just a few years ago. And when the average guy goes and takes 10 grand out of his bank account and says, I want to buy gold too, and he rushes into a coin shop and they drop 2 coins into his hand or 1 coin into his hand. Oh, how much is the silver? And this is exactly what happened in 1979. And when the public switches from gold to give me that silver, because I can get 120 of those for each one of these. When they rush back to silver, then the price of silver explodes and it outperforms gold, and you can trade that silver for gold on the way down in this gold-silver ratio while silver is outperforming gold, and get much more gold than you paid for. And then when there's certain indicators that tell me that it's time to sell a little bit of my position and accumulate high dividend yield stocks or real estate or whatever is the most severely undervalued asset class compared to the precious metals, I will be doing that in tranches. And that's what you get as an insider. Insiders are people that have purchased a certain quantity of either gold or silver from goldsilver.com, and I let them know what I'm doing in my portfolio. And what I did here, the last insider's report was on April 7th, and what I was telling everybody is that the day before, on April 6th, I made a purchase of several stocks, and they were stocks in oil tankers. I wasn't betting on the price of oil. I was betting that there would be no place to store it on land and that they would have to start storing it on ships. That is coming true, and these stocks that I bought have soared. However, I am not a front runner. I am not a licensed financial advisor. I never tell people to buy a particular thing. I've never even told people to buy gold and silver. I tell them what I'm doing. I got taken advantage of from a front runner, they're called. I'm not a front runner. A front runner is somebody that buys up a microcap stock and has a newsletter, and then they publish a newsletter about that stock, and a whole bunch of people rush into that stock that has no volume in it. It goes way up in price, but you're buying it from the guy that wrote the newsletter. Don't fall for that. I didn't tell anybody which stocks I bought. I just said that I bought some stocks in this industry, this sector. And that has performed very well for me, and I expect that it's going to perform very well over the next couple of weeks. But let me tell you, if you go and try and buy some of this now, it could be me that's selling. So I'm not recommending anything here. All I'm doing is telling you that we do have this insiders program, and I sort of saw what was coming in the future because of some good advice made by some good people. I was reading other people, and I saw an analysis of this that made a lot of sense. And so I just took a little bit of gambling money, a very small portion of my portfolio, and I said that in the video, and I bet it on this sector. And I think these were the first stocks that I've owned in years, because I've only been betting on what I see as an absolute sure, no-brainer thing, and that is that precious metals will revalue themselves by the public rushing in and bidding up their price. And throughout history, what it does is it accounts for the expansion of the fiat currency supply, and that's happening now. Getting to the main page, there's some stories here. By the way, gold and silver fell, and the silver fell more than gold. Gold-silver ratio back up to about 114. This is great news for anybody purchasing silver, but I do believe it could go as high as 150, meaning that gold would outperform it in a crisis. And so you're going to think that buying silver was a bad choice, but for me, I'm willing to take that risk and just ride through it because I just know what happened in 1979. I've studied it. Stages of economic collapse, I'm going to come to this in a minute. Central banks have pumped an annualized amount of this is 23.4 trillion into the system. This is enormous, the amount of expansion that's going on. Why deflation is poison for virus-plagued economies. Morgan Stanley, so this is Zentner. He's a mainstream economist now for a major brokerage house, says U.S. GDP could drop by 50%. So finally, we're seeing some of the mainstream wake up and realize what's going on here. I've been saying that we're going into this potentially, a modern depression, a greater depression than the Great Depression. The greatest depression is what we're going into, most likely. Best scenario is just really a depression. Most likely is a bad depression that lasts for a long time. Tail risk scenario, if the entire monetary system collapses, you've got the potential for a modern dark ages. That's like this bell curve of probabilities. Modern dark ages, tail risk scenario. But just realize it's out there, and the more that governments do to get us out of this, the more likely that could be an outcome. So mainstream is catching up. States burn through cash for unemployment payments. Virus causes thousands of Marriott hotels to close. Thousands. And this is going to sweep across the world, all of the luxury hotels, the vast majority of them. I'll be surprised if 5% of them stay open because there's nobody in them right now. And the cost of paying all these people, the cost of running a hotel, they've got to reduce that cost to just some security guards. And these places will be mothballed. And many of them will end up becoming low-income housing in the future. They'll just put a little mini kitchen in all of the rooms, and these will end up being low-income housing. Bank of Japan warns of potential financial system risks. This is what I'm talking about. If the entire financial system freezes up, then we're in some severe trouble. And so one of the things that I've been doing is limiting the amount of cash that I have in the bank because they're going to do bail-ins. And so depositors will lose cash. I'm not recommending this for anybody, but what I'm doing is trying to, transfer it over to a brokerage account, buy some of this, buy some of that. I'm going to be buying some property. I don't want to have too much cash in the bank. I'm buying a lot of precious metals because I know that precious metals are going to be buying more stocks and more property. So putting it into stocks and property right now is not the best proposition, but I do want, to be a little bit diversified at this point because I don't know what the government's reaction is going to be to all of these things. But in this story here, stages of the collapse, this section near the bottom in their conclusion. So if we manage to return to the principles of the market economy, including, which means free market, unmanipulated free market economy, including, most crucially, a return to undistorted price discovery. Price discovery is simply the mechanism of everybody haggling in the markets over a deal. You're trying to find the best price for something that you want for the currency that you've worked so hard for. And when you do that and you find the best price and you buy from them and you discover maybe they've got lousy service or a bad product, you buy from somebody else. These trillions of transactions in an economy set supply and demand in equilibrium. Anytime an authority manipulates the price, there's disastrous results. You get bubbles or you get shortages. And so there's always unintended consequences from manipulating anything. And those unintended consequences, then sometimes you've got to manipulate that. And there's another unintended consequence. And then you've got to control that thing. And after a while, you're just like Venezuela trying to control everything, and the whole thing ends up imploding. That's what happened during in the USSR. That was the most scientifically run experiment in socialism there has ever been. And when you distort price discovery, you just ruin the markets. But in the capital markets, so this is when they distort price discovery in the capital markets, the price of currency, for instance, is interest rates. Interest rates are the main tool. The world's central banks manipulating interest rates and distorting that price discovery. And so that is the price of currency. All of the currency, the price of borrowing it is the interest rate. When you manipulate that, you've manipulated the entire economy, because the amount of currency created has to do with the price. If the price is too high, not as many loans are created, and that's how most of the currency gets created, is through loans. And so price discovery is crucial. So if we return to undistorted price discovery in the capital markets, we are likely to see one of the most powerful recoveries in global economic history. I absolutely believe that. That is absolutely spot on. However, debt monetization, modern monetary theory, helicopter drops, and other currency, they don't understand the difference between money and currency. Money has to be a store of value. Only fiat currency can be conjured into existence. You can't conjure money. Money has to be worked for, and that's the reason it stores value. But currency conjuring schemes would corrupt the economy further, making a sustained recovery impossible. I absolutely agree. That's where we go into a very, very long or even permanent depression, or the potential of modern dark ages. This, unfortunately, is the path we are currently on. Moreover, with the governments and the central banks assuming a much bigger role in the economy and society in this darker scenario, some form of fascism, which is by definition the merger of state and corporate power, would be the likely end result of these developments. I couldn't agree more. That is the road that we are currently on. We can do nothing more than hope that wise, courageous, far-sighted political leadership will spare us from that horrible fate. I could not disagree more. This is where we need to do something about it, and relying on political leadership is the big downfall here. We need to all start educating each other. We all need to study this, find out as much about it as possible, inform people. And there's if you go to colleges right now, the majority is favoring socialism, and we have to let them know. If you know a college student that is talking about socialism, you got to ask them for proof that socialism works, because socialism has created poverty and death for as far back as you can study it. It does not create prosperity. Prosperity only comes from free market capitalism, and capitalism has become a dirty word, but it is the capitalists that create, the people that are willing to save up capital, take a risk with their capital, that's capitalism, take a risk with their capital, and start a business and employ people. That's what creates an economy, is the people that are willing to take that risk. We have to get back to where capitalism is being rewarded, and where the markets have free market price discovery in order for things to be prosperous. And we can't do that by relying on a political leader to show us the way. It's got to be us demanding that they go down this road. So you share this with everybody you can. Try and figure out as much of this as possible on your own, and then start educating each other. That's the way to beat this. I want to welcome the 4,466 new subscribers, and just make sure you hit that notification bell. Chart of the day is from my friend Peter Spina. Good. Get the gold to the hungry buyers. This is the Swiss gold exports, and they're at an 8-year high. Probably goes back a lot further than that. But to the United States, gold exports to the United States jumped. Now, what this is, though, this is because there's this demand by the big smart money. This isn't 1 ounce bars and fractional stuff. This is kilo bars and 100 ounce bars of gold. And with mints being, right now they're shuttered due to coronavirus and stuff. The small denomination precious metals are getting hard to get. They are slowly becoming unobtainium. And as gold and silver become unobtainium, that will cause them to turn into unaffordium. And it's the big boys moving in. This is what the great gold and silver rush of the 21st century, my coming book, is about. Meme of the day. This is hilarious. I see old Mr. Conspiracy Theory is at it again. Years ago, Doug Casey once said, "The day that you have to worry about is the day that the government stops treating you as a milk cow and starts treating you as beef cattle." I want to thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.